Pretty privilege apparently refers to the benefits that those receive in society just for being physically attractive. Those who experience this often get favorable treatment in social, professional, and romantic situations, and studies even show that attractive people may be perceived as smarter, more friendly, or trustworthy, which can lead to better opportunities. Like, people will literally ignore people's red flags because they look good. Not only does pretty privilege apply to baby hippos with more internet clout points than me, but it also applies to these 5 cars.
I'm TJ Hunt, and you're watching Instagram.
Starting off with the Pagani Huayra. The Huayra was introduced in 2011 and was a stunning masterpiece of automotive engineering and design. Horacio Pagani just got done sticking it to Lamborghini with the Zonda after they wouldn't let him carry out his innovations in carbon fiber there, but this time he wanted to put even more emphasis on aesthetics and design. The Huayra takes its name from the ancient Incan god of wind, which is pretty fitting for a car that had what at the time was the most interesting active aerodynamic system I've ever seen on a vehicle, and it was integrated so well into such an elegant design. It's honestly pretty impressive how one man designed such a beautiful, intentionally feminine design to be so functional. Yet still, you can't say this car is form over function, because every single part of this car's form is functional. The chassis of this car is made of carbon titanium, which pretty much makes the frame bulletproof. Inside the cabin is honestly the most perfect gray area between luxury and art. The Huayra is the only hypercar that I've ever sat inside, and honestly, it's just as nice as everyone makes it out to be. It's a sea of hand-stitched Italian leather, beautifully polished aluminum, and insanely intricate detailing that mirrors the same care that was given to the exterior. I didn't notice a single piece of plastic anywhere on this vehicle. Not to mention, the gull-wing doors that are on the coupe add to this surreal experience that overall feels like something that's more at home inside of a luxury home rather than something that rides on wheels. The thing is, I feel like this car was just so beautiful that people were willing to overlook the fact that it had an archaic drivetrain in a car that cost $1.4 million base. And keep in mind that $1.4 million price tag was the base MSRP with no options. I don't think anyone ever ordered a Huayra with no options. To be fair, the Huayra has a 6-liter twin-turbo V12 making 700 horsepower and even more torque at 737 pound-feet, and then the later versions made even more power. Cause wait a second, a $1.4 million hypercar in this decade making only 700 horsepower from a Mercedes motor they've been using since 10 years ago? I could make a whole video on why that kind of transmission could ruin the entire driving experience, and Lamborghini owners are going to cope really hard in the comments, but I digress. The Pagani Huayra is definitely one of those cars that just because it looks fucking incredible, it gets a pass. The BMW i8 was a massive step forward in many ways, but it had some notable shortcomings and it didn't go without its criticism, particularly about the drivetrain. Also, if you start to hear some background noise, it's because it's pissing raining. We're about to have a hurricane. For a car that started at $140,000, nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, asked for a 1.3 liter 3-cylinder from a Mini Cooper as a part of a hybrid drivetrain. Producing a combined 369 horsepower, the i8's acceleration wasn't terrible. It put that 369 horsepower down to all 4 wheels, and I mean it put it down. The instant torque from the electric motors filled up the bottom end of the power band, and quite honestly, it pulled almost like an M4, which is unfortunate because almost like an M4 isn't good enough when it had doors that go up and starts at $140,000. I mean, seriously, you could have had a 911 Carrera 4 GTS for less money, and it made 430 all-wheel horsepower. You could have even had an M6 with 500 something horsepower for cheaper, and it came with the V8 that the i8 should have had. In a market filled with high-end sports cars with way more power coming through much more interesting motors, the i8 lacked that visceral thrill that a lot of car guys were craving at that price point. To give BMW credit though, they really were thinking 10 years ahead. I remember back then everybody was picking at BMW and Acura for that matter for making a hybrid sports car and bragging about how their favorite brand was better. Well, I hate to break it to you. This might be a controversial take, but I think the i8 truly shined in its design and its contribution to the use of carbon fiber in structural components. I think the only other company making carbon fiber tubs back then was McLaren. This car, for better or for worse, was incredibly sleek and futuristic, and in typical BMW fashion, it wasn't really that far of a cry from its concept. It kept the supercar-like proportions, the scissor doors, most of the front end, most of the rear end, and it was really one of the most visually striking cars on the market. The performance definitely didn't live up to the expectations of such a visually striking car, but it had a big impact on both design and material use for the brand. Serious car guys like some of y'all watching this channel probably weren't that fond of this vehicle for the reasons I already stated, but the design definitely sold it to a lot of people in the high-end market that usually wouldn't have bought a 3-cylinder hybrid. Unfortunately, we live in a world where the only muscle cars still in production, the Mustang, Camaro, Charger, and Challenger, are on their last life.
No. Wait.
The Mustang finally overcame the crowd killing allegations and became a sports car. The Mopar boys got a supercharger and became the new Mustang guys, and the Camaro is actually a better sports car than both of them. These cars represent an era that we no longer get to enjoy. It's kind of funny because the European car guys used to pick on American cars for not being sporty and responsive enough, and now that they are, or at least the Mustangs and Chevys are, all the European cars got neutered and electrified, while the American cars are still the final bastions of manual transmissions, naturally aspirated large displacement V8s, and exhausts that actually sound good. Somehow in a more modern era, and as a kid I never saw this coming, American car makers still figure out a way to make brute power meet refined engineering, or at least Chevy and Ford did, while Dodge killed their only sports car and doubled down on making 700 horsepower SUVs. But I think they all did their part in a way to make sure the muscle car legacy stays alive. They offer driving experiences that just hardly exist in other cars anymore, and they have design cues that honor their heritage while still bringing things up to modern standards and appealing to both old heads and younger car guys like myself. But for each one of these vehicles, a weaker, worse sounding, worse performing trim stands in its way. I present to you V6 muscle cars. These cars are made for an overly confident, more aggressive breed of muscle car owners. D1 crash outs, if you will. Especially the Camaros. Bro, the V6 Camaro owners drive like they got 9 lives. I swear to God. There's a guy in my area who drives a V6 Camaro who goes like 75 and a 35. If you get in his way, he's gonna go around you and duck into opposing traffic to get around you. That shit blows my mind. I know he had to be a Nissan Altima owner in his past life. And I swear to God, these guys act like their cars are as cool as the V8 model. And it's crazy because it's just small design cues that make these cars known that they're the V6 model. Other than that, they still carry the same presence as the V8 cars. I'm gonna be honest. Modern AMGs aren't quite as visceral as the M cars, but they are just as fast, and they still have hand-built AMG motors. Something BMW and Audi can't say. The AMGs look a lot closer to their non-AMG models, and that's not exactly a bad thing. Without seeing the AMG badge, it really is an if you know type of situation. Whether it's an A45 or an SLS Black Series, these cars are surprisingly capable. Like, have you seen a built A45? Like, y'all not hear me. Like, have you seen a built A45? All the Europeans in the chat finna because I don't think you understand. There are 500 horsepower AMG hatchbacks out there. A hatchback with 500 horsepower. But for every 500 horsepower AMG hatchback, there's a guy in an AMG that ends with 43. If you have an AMG but your AMG model ends with 43, I hate to break it to you, but it's hardly an AMG. And you likely move like a V6 muscle car owner. Fun fact, Mercedes actually used to sell non-AMG models that ended in 450. Then one year they decided that they wanted to make the 450 customers feel special, so they gave them AMG badges, and that's how you get models like the C43 AMG. One of the most notorious German cars out there for having V6 muscle car energy. Don't get me wrong, these cars are still capable of some serious power. They're basically M lights. Like the C43 is the M340i of Mercedes. What makes these C43 guys so notorious though is the fact that the C43 looks exactly like the C63. So you know these guys are pulling up on girls like, I'm outside in an AMG, right outside. TT.
Can you shut the fuck up?
Y'all give the V6 guys too much power by making these look nearly identical. Like if you squint really hard after like 3 to 4 beers, you can't tell that the 63 has the angular exhaust and the 43 has the round exhaust. Last but not least, we have regular traffic, but from 60 years ago. For some reason, classic cars are undeniably better looking in most cases. It's honestly insane how some of these long-running car models have became what they are today. Like, bro, look at this. This is a Suburban back in the day. Chevy really had some bangers back in the day, but the downfall of the Impala needs to be studied. Because how do we go from this to this in less than a century? Like, at the same time the Corvette went from this to this, the Impala went from this to this. But I think the old heads were right. A lot of cars were cooler back in their day. I mean, are y'all taking this truck or this truck? This BMW or this BMW? This Mercedes or this Mercedes? Be honest with yourself, because you're lying to a screen right now. It's crazy how just regular ass traffic would look at least decent back in the day, but nowadays these same companies struggle to put out a decent looking car. But you know what I think the old heads glaze a little bit too hard about these cars? How simple everything was. They love to go on about how you could work on everything and how everything under the hood was very straightforward, and they might be right, but that's because it needed to be, because these vehicles weren't nearly as reliable as they make them out to be. Believe it or not, modern cars are more reliable by a long shot, and you just simply don't have to pop the hood as often. The advancements we've made in cooling, dampening, build quality, materials, engine oil, fuel, and design have all made for more reliable vehicles overall. People who have classic cars will tell you otherwise, but I need them to keep that same type of energy when they're working on their car every weekend, or they have their car in the shop every other month, or it just doesn't run like ever and their wife wants them to sell the car. They always talk about how good things used to be and how they want to get it back up running one day, but that's the type of nostalgia that fuels the classic car market. The cars looked better back then and they evoke a sense of nostalgia that makes people want to put up with all their shortcomings. Not only do they not run as well, but they also drive worse. They're slower, less comfortable, handle worse, and overall they're less usable. If you see someone daily a classic car, they're usually doing it for the aesthetic, I promise you. I live in South Carolina, and in Charleston you see a ton of people driving resto-modded Land Rover Defenders and G-Wagons, and even though the new G-Wagons and new Defenders are objectively better vehicles, people put up with the shortcomings because they look cool. Don't get me wrong, if I had $250,000 to blow, I'd have a Banyan Motors G-Wagon or an ECD Defender so fast, but you have to understand that what you're buying is an objectively less practical vehicle. Let me know in the comments which vehicles you guys think suffer from pretty privilege. If you liked the video, make sure you leave a like and go subscribe, turn your notifications on so you can get all the rest of the videos from me when they come out. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Till next time, peace.